Swayam Rupa Dadamihim Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Gurum Shri Udavadagamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajanam Savanadavanatam Vikam Tam Sadhikam Sadvaitam Savadutam Variyana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Savana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Ch Padinanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Auramani Pacharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatideshatarani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sagodohana hi Griheshu Grihamedinam Avekshate Mahabhagas Titi Kurvam Stadashramam Sahi Sukadeva Goswami sa go Dahana Matram only for the time of milking the cow. He certainly Grihesh in the house, Grihamedinam of the householders, Avekshate awaits Mahabhaga, the most fortunate thief, the pilgrimage Kurvan, transforming Tat Ashramam, the residence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hey, Sukadeva Goswami was accustomed to stay at the doors of a household only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. Purport. Sukadeva Goswami met Emperor Parikshit and explained the text of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He was not accustomed to stay at any householder's residence half an hour at the time of milking the cow, and he would just take alms from the fortunate householder. That was to sanctify the residence by his auspicious presence. Therefore, Sukadeva Goswami is an ideal preacher established in the transcendental position. From his activities, those who are in the renounced order of life and dedicated to the mission of the preaching of the message of Godhead should learn that they have no business with householders to save and except to enlighten them in transcendental knowledge. Such asking for alms from the householder should be for the purpose of sanctifying his home. One who is in the renounced order of life should not be allured by the glamour of the householder's worldly possessions and thus become subservient to the worldly man. But one who is in the renounced order of life, this is much more dangerous than drinking poison and committing suicide. Oh, very powerful statements. The fourth chapter. Next, Abhimanyusutam Suta Prahur Bhagavatottamam Tasya Janma Mahashrayam Karmani Chagrihini Naham. Abhimanyu the son of Abhimanyu, Suta, O Suta, Prahu, who is said to be Bhagavatottamam, the first class devotee of the Lord. Tasya, his Janma, birth, Maha Ashcharyam, very wonderful, Karmani activities. Cha and Grihini, please speak to us. Translation purport. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first class devotee of the Lord, and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. Purport. The birth of Maharaj Parikshit is wonderful because in the womb of his mother, he was protected by the personality of Lord Sri Krishna. His activities are also wonderful because he chastised Kali, who was attempting to kill a cow. To kill cows means to end human civilization. What? He wanted to protect the cow from being killed by the great representative of sin. His death is also wonderful because he got previous notice of his death, which is wonderful for any mortal being, and thus he prepared himself for passing away by sitting down on a bank of Ganges and hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. During all the days he heard Bhagavatam, he did not take food or drink. Did he sleep or a moment? What? So wonderful. So everything about him is wonderful, and his activities are worth hearing attentively. Desire is expressed herein to hear about him in detail. So Samrat The Samrat Kasya Hetu Pandunam Manavardanaha Prayopavisto Gangayam Anadrityadiratshriyam Shriyam. Sahi Samrat, the emperor Kasya, for what? Va or Hetu, reason, Pandu Nam, of the sons of the Pandu, Mahavardhanaha, one who enriches the family, Praya Upavishtaha, sitting and fasting, Ganga on the bank of the Ganges, Anadritya, neglecting Adira, the acquired kingdom, Shriyam, opulences, translation. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of the Ganges and fast until death? They're the questions. They want to know everything about him. Maharaj Parikshit was emperor of the world and all the seas and the oceans, and he did not have to take trouble to acquire such a kingdom by his own effort. He inherited it from his grandfathers, Maharaj Yudhishthira and brothers. Besides that, he was doing well in the administration and worthy of the good name of his forefathers. Consequently, there was nothing undesirable in his opulence and administration. Then, why should he give up all these favorable circumstances and sit down on the bank of the Ganges, fasting till death? This is astonishing, and therefore all were eager to know the cause. Namante yat padanikitamātmanah Shivaya Hariyadhanani Satravaha Katam Savirah Sriyamangadustajam Yuvai Satotsar Shashtam Mahusaha Shubhi. Synonyms: Namanti, bow down, Yatapada, whose feet, Niketanam, under Atmanaha, owns Shivaya, welfare, Haniya, I'll use it to bring about, Dhanani, wealth, Satrabaha, enemies, Katam, for what reason, Sahi, Viraha, the chivalrous, Shriyam, opulences, Anga, O Sutta Goswami, Dushchitam, insuperable, Yuva, in full youth, Aishata, desired, Utsastum, to give up, Oho, exclamation, Saha, with Ashubhi, life. Translation: he was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? Purport: there was nothing undesirable in his life. He was quite a young man and could enjoy life with power and opulence. So there was no question of retiring from active life. There was no difficulty in collecting the state taxes because he was so powerful and chivalrous that even his enemies would come to him and bow down at his feet and surrender all wealth for their own benefit. Maharaj Parikshit was a pious king. He conquered his enemies and therefore kingdom was full of prosperity. There was enough milk, grains, and metals, and all the rivers and mountains were full of potency. So materially everything was satisfactory. Therefore, there was no question of untimely giving up his kingdom or life. The sages were eager to hear about all this. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye yavottamaslokapārāya janaha jivantina martam nasoparasrayam mumucho nirvidya kutah kalevaram. Synonyms: Shivaya, welfare, Lokasya, for all living beings, Bhavaya, for flourishing, Bhutaye, for economic development, Ye, one who is, Uttama Sloka Parayana, devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead, Janaha, men, Jivanti, do live, none, but not Atma, Artham, selfish interest, Asau, that, Para Ashriyam, shelter for others, Momocha gave up, Nirvidya, being freed from all attachment, Kutaha, for what reason, Kalevaram, mortal body. Translation: those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of God and live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, so how could he give up his? See, these are the things. Because he was a householder. A devotee of the Lord automatically has all good qualifications. And the emperor was a typical example of this. Personally, he had no attachment for all the worldly opulences in his possession. But since he was a king for all round welfare for his citizens, he was always busy in the welfare work of the public, not only for this life, but also for the next. He would not allow slaughterhouses or killing of the cows. He was not a foolish and partial administrator who would arrange for the protection of one living being and allow another to be killed. Because he was a devotee of the Lord, he knew perfectly well how to conduct his administration for everyone's happiness. Men, animals, plants, and all living creatures. He was not selfishly interested. Selfishness is either self-centered or self-extended. He was neither. His interest was to please the supreme truth, the personality of Godhead. The king is the representative of the supreme Lord, and therefore the king's interest must be identical with that of the supreme Lord. The supreme Lord wants all living beings to be obedient to him and thereby become happy. Want all living beings to be obedient to him and therefore become happy. Yeah. So if you become obedient to Krishna, then you will become happy. Therefore, the king's interest is to guide all subjects back to the kingdom of God. Hence, all the activities of the citizens should be coordinated so that they can, at the end, go back home, back to God. Under the administration of the representative king, the kingdom is full of opulence. At the time, human beings do not eat animals. There are ample food, grains, milk, fruit, and vegetables, so that the human beings, as well as the animals, can eat sumptuously and to their heart's content. If all living beings are satisfied with food and shelter and obey the prescribed rules, there cannot be any disturbances between one living being and another. Emperor Parishit was a worthy king, and therefore all were happy during his reign. That sarvamanah samachakshva पृष्टो यद् इह किञ्चन मन्ये त्वं विषये वाचां स्नातं मन्यत्र चान्दसा तद् that Sarvam all now unto a Sama Chakshva clearly explained. Prishtaha question yet iha herein. Kinjana all that money we think Swam you Vishaye in all the subjects vacham meaning of the words. Snatam fully acquainted. Anyatra except Chandasar portion of the Vedas. Translation. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all the subjects except some portions of the Vedas. And thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and Parivratikas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas, but the Parivratikas or learned preachers are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajikacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas, who are meant for administering Vedic rites. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the intermediate preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in the different ways. In the Madhyan Sama, Athara, Rig, Yajur, Purana are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme. The Vedic mantras are mostly begun with Pranava Omkara, and it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that doesn't mean that Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is ripened fruit of the Vedas as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Sri Sukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. Sri Sukadeva Goswami is following in his footsteps, and therefore his position is not the least less important because he was not expert in chanting Vedic mantras with metric pronunciation, which depends more on practice than actual realization. Realization is more important than parrot-like chanting. Oh. श्रुतवाचा द्वापरे समनुप्राप्ते तृतीये युगपर्यये जातः पराशरद्योगी वासैक्यं कलया हरेः. Surrounding Sudha Swami Vata said Dwapari in the second millennium, Samuprapti on the advent of Tritiya, third Yuga millennium, Prapti in the place Jata was begotten. Parasarat by Parasara Yogi the Great said Vasavyam in the womb of the daughter of Vasu, Kalaya in the plenary portion, Hare of the personality of Godhead. Translation Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great said Vyasadeva was born to the Parasara within the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. There is a chronological order of the four millenniums, namely Satya, Dwapara, Treta, and Kali, but sometimes there is overlapping. During the regime of the Vaivasvata Manu, there was an overlapping of the 28th round of the four millenniums, and the third millennium appeared prior to the second. In that particular millennium, the Lord Krishna also descends, and because of this, there was some particular alteration. The mother of the great sage was Satyavati, the daughter of the Vasu, the fisherman, and the father was a great Parasara Muni. That is the history of the Vyasadev's birth. Every millennium is divided into three periods, and each period is called Sandhya. Vyasadeva appeared in the third Sandhya of that particular age. सकदाचित् सरस्वत्य उपस्पृश्य जलं शुचिः विविक्तयेक आशीन उदितेरविमण्डले Sahi kadachit once Saraswatyah on the bank of the Saraswati Upasprishya after finishing morning of ablutions Jalam water Suchihi being purified Vivikte concentration Eka alone Ashinaha being thus seated Udite on the rise Ravit Mandale on the sun disk. Translation from once upon a time, he Vyasadeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablutions in the matter of in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. The river Saraswati is flowing in the Badrikashrama area of the Himalayas. So the place indicated here is Samya Prasa in the Badrikashrama where Sri Vyasadeva is residing. Paravaram Janasarishi Vyakti Praptam Bhuvi Para Avara Rishi Vyasadeva Kali and in the course of time observed Ramhasa by great force. Yuga Dharma acts in terms of the millennium. Vedikaram anomalies. Praptam having accrued Bhuvi on the earth. Yuga different ages. Translation. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport. The great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus, he could see the future anomalies in the Kali Yuga and accordingly he made arrangements for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in the age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of the ignorance, they are unable to elevate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. भौतिकानां च भावानां शक्तिकृशं च तत्कृतम् अश्रद्धदानां निःसत्त्वां दुर्मेधं रसितायुषः दुर्भागांश्च जनां वीक्ष्य मुनिदिव्येन चक्षुषा सर्ववर्णाश्रमाणं यत् दद्यो हितम् अमोघदृक्. Synonyms Bhautikānam cha also everything that is made of matter, Bhavanam, action, Shakti Krisham cha, a deterioration of natural power, Tat Kritam rendered by that, Astraddhadanam of the faithless, Nissatvatam, impatient due to want of the mode of quickness. Durmedam, thus witted, Rashita reduced Ayusha of the duration of life, Durbhagam cha, also the unlucky, Janam, people in general, Diksha by seeing. Muni, the Muni, Divya and the transcendent effects which serve all Varna Ashram, all the statuses and orders of life. Yet what Dadhi have contemplated, Hitam, welfare, Amogatrik, one who is fully equipped in knowledge. Translation. The great sage who was fully equipped in knowledge could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material. Due to the influence of the age, he could see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of all men in all status and orders of life. Purpose. The unmanifested in the course of time are so powerful that they reduce all matter to oblivion in due course. In Kali Yuga, the last millennium of around 4 millenniums, the power of all material objects deteriorates by the influence of the time in this age. The duration of the material body of the people in general is much reduced, and so is the memory. The action of the matter has also not so much incentive. The land does not produce food grains in the same proportion as it did in other ages. The cow doesn't give as much milk as it used to give formerly. The production of vegetables and fruits is less than before. As such, all living beings, both men and animals, do not have sumptuous, nourishing food. Due to want of so many necessities of life, naturally the duration of life is reduced. The memory is short, the intelligence is meager, mutual dealings are full of hypocrisy, and so on. Due to want of so many necessities of life naturally. Oh, this is why. great point. This is a very enlightening point. It reduces it. The great Saint Vyasadeva could see this by his transcendental vision. As an astrologer can see the full fate of a man, or an astronomer can foretell the solar and lunar eclipses, those liberated souls who can see through the scriptures can foretell the future of all mankind. They can say this due to the sharp vision of spiritual attainment. And all such transcendentalists who are natural devotees of the Lord are always eager to render welfare service to the people in general. They are the real friends of the people in general, not the so-called public leaders who are unable to see what is going on happen 5 minutes ahead. In this age, people in general, as their so-called leaders, are all unlucky fellows, faithless in spiritual knowledge and influenced by the age of Kali. They're always disturbed by various diseases. For example, in the present age, there are so many TB patients in TB hospitals. But formerly, this was not so because the time was so unfavorable. The unfortunate men of this age are always reluctant to give a reception to the transcendentalists who are representatives of Srimad, and selfless workers always busy in planning something which may help everyone in all status and orders of life. The greatest philanthropists are those transcendentalists who represent the mission of Vyasa, Narada, Madhva, Chaitanya, Rupa, Saraswati, etc. They're all one and the same. The personalities may be different, but the aim of the mission is one and the same, namely to deliver the fallen souls back to God. Thank you all for joining this wonderful discourse. Hare Krishna.